trying to...
Brian, thank you very much. And right now, thousands of residents are barricaded inside of their homes. They're listening to the wind, and they're hoping for the best. Now, this is the most crucial period as the hurricane moves onto land. For the very latest on the situation, we want to take you right to the Florida Panhandle and NBC6 reporter Hank Tester.
Lots of wind and plenty of hard-driving rain all day long. A fair warning that a massive hurricane is just over the horizon.
This storm certainly has high potential of a loss of life and severe to catastrophic property damage.
It's already a killer storm. 20 dead in Mexico. A great fear here, Opal may generate winds up to 150 to 170 miles per hour.
Last time, Hurricane Aaron was here, and it kind of caught us. We just weren't quite ready for it.
2 hurricanes have pounded this area recently. Aaron just 2 months ago. Opal forecasters and state officials say could be far worse.
You're on full alert, and I urge every family and business to closely monitor Opal's progress.
Along the Panhandle, the weather was ugly all day. The hurricane expected to pile a 12 to 15-foot storm surge on land somewhere near Pensacola. Locals who usually ride these storms out are getting out, heading inland. The forecasters say outrunning this huge hurricane will be tough. Late this afternoon, thousands are already in shelters, businesses boarded up, and local residents praying Opal won't be as bad as predicted. There's great fear in northern Florida that Hurricane Opal will be far worse than Hurricane Andrew that devastated South Dade in 1992. Reporting from Pensacola, Hank Tester, NBC6.
All right, now Hank Tester actually just filed that report just a couple of moments ago. We have Hank live on the telephone right now. Hank, I understand it's very ferocious at this moment.
Jennifer, yeah, we're about 10 miles away from the coast right at the moment. We deemed it too dangerous to have the satellite truck down in that area. And right now, of course, rain fade has prevented us from providing you a live picture of what is going on. Winds blowing 70 to 80 miles per hour right now, rocking our truck fairly decently. As Brian reported, 1 death so far at Crestview, Florida. That was due to a tornado. The shelters are absolutely full. People were out on the bridge of panic today going out of this city as they got hung up on I-10 heading out. It got very, very slow and, in fact, stopped at one point. People were getting out of the cars and being quite apprehensive. So people were scared because of Hurricane Aaron, and they believe that this is going to be a very, very serious hurricane. We figure it's going to be hitting here in about another hour and one half. It stretches, its effects stretch from Mississippi, Alabama, all the way across the Panhandle of Florida. So we are again hunkered down in the satellite truck and standing by for developments. Reporting live from Pensacola, Hank Tester, NBC6. Back to you.
Okay, Hank, thank you very much. Obviously, Hank will keep us posted.
Absolutely. By the way, South Florida is lending its hurricane experience to the Panhandle.
Makes Opal the second costliest storm in Florida history, second only to Hurricane Andrew. Opal's powerful punch is now being felt in the Midwest. The storm is now a low-pressure system over the Ohio Valley. But as we've said, the real concern is along the coast of the Florida Panhandle and the fragile barrier islands. That's where the areas have sustained major damage. Here's Hank Tester with more.
All too familiar in the state of Florida. Another cleanup after yet another hurricane. The evidence of Opal is everywhere. Take a look at this boat right here, right in the middle of the street. There are hundreds just like it. And it's just another example of what is going on here. This is a serious situation. Here's the latest. In the wake of Hurricane Opal, the recovery, the cleanup, already underway. $1.8 billion in insured damage, the second costliest storm in Florida history.
Oh, it's a lot worse than I ever could imagine it could be.
In the bright Florida sun, the damage in some locations is overwhelming. South of Panama City, Mexico Beach, washed away by the storm surge. The story of Opal is the 12 to 15-foot surges that swept across beachfront property and washed away condos. Though Opal's winds dropped as it stormed ashore, it was still a frightening experience.
The
popular vacation retreat has no power. Water and sewage systems are not functioning.
Everything was kind of floating, and the wind was just horrible. It was really talking to you.
I'm from California. I'm used to earthquakes, but I told my wife I'm going to move to Arizona, Phoenix, because I'm not going to go through another hurricane. That's it for me.
The challenge facing those along the Panhandle beaches, realizing that going through a hurricane is fairly easy. It's the aftermath that is so painful. Putting things back together can take years. President Clinton has declared the area a federal disaster. That means lots more of federal money will pour into this area to clean up yet another Florida natural disaster. That's the latest from Fort Walton Beach. I'm Hank Tester. My colleague Rob Pierce has been in the helicopter all day long in Sky 6, and he's been gathering plenty of interesting pictures. Rob, what's up?
Well, Hank, we're over Panama City Beach right now, and the devastation is as far as the eye can see. Let me take you outside of our news helicopter right now. You can see that the walls and the foundations and other parts of buildings have just come toppling down. Look at this here. You can see that...
Florida Panhandle. The pictures, well, they say it all. Homes literally crushed to the ground. In one case, a house actually swept out to sea. And in an ironic twist, boats tossed into the streets. Initial reports show that Opal has caused nearly $2 billion worth of damage. And what's worse, at least 11 people have died because of the storm. Tonight we have live team coverage from the Panhandle. NBC6 reporter Peggy Fox is in Panama City. Photographer Rob Pierce is surveying the damage in Sky 6. And reporter Hank Tester is live in Fort Walton Beach. We begin tonight with Peggy Fox.
Jose, this is a Gulf Coast highway. All along it you can see devastation. Buildings torn apart, debris littering the highway, much like this. It is literally a mess. Looks like a war zone. $1.8 billion in damages. But on a personal note, for the people who live and work here, simply it is devastating. Gordon Costley is crushed. What he spent his entire life working for has been torn apart by Hurricane Opal. He owns what was the Jungle Beach Motel Resort.
We always just demolished. Air conditioners, refrigerators, TV, beds, everything just
completely ruined.
At the end, see right on it, it just caved it in.
What do you think when you look at this?
You cry.
Have you been crying?
Yeah.
Much of the coastline along Panama City to Fort Walton Beach looks the same, devastated. The area is under a lockdown to prevent looting, so traffic is backed up. A highway trooper promises traffic will move soon along Highway 231, soothing words to people trying to return home, but stuck for up to 3 hours as the highway becomes a virtual parking lot. This backup goes at least 20 miles all the way down to Panama City Beach, where crews are evaluating 2 bridges to see if they withstood the winds okay.
Preparing for the worst and hoping for the best.
We're concerned that our properties and our friends and families are...
Our animals are still alive.
Our animals, yes.
Yeah, are you worried?
We thought about it and we're trying to figure out what would be best, if it'd go down to the ground or just the roof off or something, but I'm sure it got hit somehow because it's only about a block off the beach.
As property owners prepare for damages from Opal's winds and storm surge, the National Guard and emergency crews from across the state are en route to help with recovery efforts. We've also seen emergency personnel and law enforcement from the Miami area. We've seen homestead crews up here all helping out. They're actually helping in roadblocks a couple miles down that way because this area is under a lockdown for fear of looting. You can see this traffic is virtually empty. That's because they're holding residents back, trying to get things cleaned up first before they let them in. This area has no electricity and no sewer service right now. For a look at what it looks like from above, let's go to my colleague Rob Pierce. Rob?
Peggy, right now we're in Panama City Beach flying above it. Now we've been surveying the damage all day along the Panhandle. Let me take you live outside of Sky 6 right now. You can see that means that the reason these homes were destroyed most likely was because of storm surge. Now my colleague Hank Tester has been following this storm. He joins us now from Fort Walton Beach. Hank?
Well, thanks a lot, Rob, and great job up there. I tell you, this is part of the $1.8 billion damage that has occurred here in the state of Florida. You can see right behind me, they're getting ready to take this boat out of this street. Let's take a look at some videotape concerning the cleanup. As we well know, in South Florida, getting through the 4 hours of a hurricane is one challenge, but the aftermath is a never-ending nightmare. From Mexico Beach to Fort Walton Beach, the scenes are much the same. Massive damage caused by the 12 to 15-foot storm eye and the storm surge. Homes, condos, businesses all soaked, ripped apart, roofs gone. For some, it will take years to put their lives and property back in order. Insurance adjusters already here, so are the contractors. There are already discussions about revamping building codes. So if you think you have heard it all before, you're right. Opal is just a junior version of Andrew. Back live here in the Fort Walton Beach, it's the same smell, it's the same look all around this area as we had with Andrew 2 years ago, only it just wasn't as severe. And one other thing, very interesting, guess who's doing crowd control here right now today? The Homestead Police Department, all volunteers. Reporting live from Fort Walton Beach, I'm Hank Tester, NBC 6.
All right, thank you, Hank. And meanwhile, relief workers in South Florida are helping out the victims of Hurricane Opal right now, as Hank just mentioned.
Speaks out on the president's plan. In other news now, cleanup continues in the Florida Panhandle following the devastation left by Hurricane Opal. Many residents on the hard-hit barrier island still have not been able to go home to see if anything is left. NBC 6 reporter Hank Tester is in Navarre now with the latest.
We're in Navarre, Florida. You can see behind me here debris off of the barrier islands. Now, you remember during Hurricane Andrew, the day after, there was euphoria. People were happy they just survived. And then reality set in. Well, that's just exactly what's happening here.
If my home is okay, why can't I stay in it?
The reality of Hurricane Opal has landed hard on Lorraine Brown and other residents of Pensacola Beach. They want back on their island. They need a permit to do so.
Why do we have to stand in line to go to our homes?
A sticker on our windshield identifies us as lessee.
The euphoria of survival and post-storm camaraderie is fading quickly. Opal wiped out years of toil and dreams. $1.8 billion in Florida property damage is daunting, especially if your home is part of that statistic.
I sure don't want to rebuild. You know, if there is anything wrong with the house, I'm not one to come back and ask for the punishment again.
Across the South, Opal left a wake of havoc. Down power lines, trees uprooted, 9 dead in Georgia. At last count, 18 fatalities in the U.S., 10 in Mexico, $2.8 billion in damage to the southeast.
Well, this is 100% loss.
This is Mexico Beach, Florida. These residents getting their first look at their homes or what's left of them. This is a scene that will be repeated across the Panhandle many times.
I would be surprised if they open that island back up.
They probably will, but Hurricane Opal guaranteed these islands would never be the same.
Well, our coverage of Hurricane Opal continues. That
the majority of the Cuban exile community is going to oppose these new measures.
Well, stay with NBC 6 for complete coverage of the Cuba deal and what it means for South Florida.
Tonight we are getting a better picture of the power of Hurricane Opal. The death toll has risen again. Opal is now blamed for at least 18 deaths in 4 states. Hundreds of thousands of people are still without power. Many rivers are just now beginning to overflow because of the rains. Now, a cleanup process we all know too well is underway. For the very latest on Opal's aftermath, we go live to NBC 6 reporter Hank Tester. Hank, where are you?
Hank, I'm in Navarre, and I'll tell you what, Jose, if yesterday was a celebration of survival, as you well know after Hurricane Andrew, today's the day that reality smacked these folks right in the face. Let's take a look at some videotape we just got in. The locals had only seen TV pictures of the damage to their barrier island homes. Today, some folks got to eyeball the devastation firsthand. Many were plainly discouraged, saying maybe it was a mistake to build in such a location vulnerable to a major hurricane. They sounded much like a weekend gambler that had just taken a great big hit at the tables. The $1.8 billion price tag on the damage no longer an abstract. Folks will not make a decision to rebuild, some say. Many we talked to said they would not rebuild.
We get to work, get it over with, clean up, start over.
We always have that chance here on the coast, and it happens every few years, so we just have to go from there.
I sure don't want to rebuild. You know, if there is anything wrong with the house, I'm not one to come back and ask for the punishment again.
Well, back live here at Navarre, Things are kind of at a standstill, Jose, as you well remember. Right after Hurricane Andrew, it took time for contractors to assess the situation. Many folks haven't even got out to their homes yet, so that's about where we are right now. They're going to be dealing with curfews tonight and, of course, getting supplies and just making their lives work. Reporting live from Navarre, I'm Hank Tester, NBC6. Back to you, Jose.
Hank, you lost your house. Must be like deja vu.
Yeah, and you know, it sure is very familiar, and it's something I just don't like living through. You know what I mean?
Hank Tester, thank you very much for that story. And Opal has been partly responsible for drenching an historic visit in the Northeast.
Boy, that's sure. I'll